Jordan Neely is the name of the unhoused man who was killed in broad daylight by a chokehold from a passenger. And a lot of outrage sparked. It was on video. The New York Post framed it as some heroic act by the man that murdered Jordan Neely, who was unwell and crying out for help. And the Post, owned by the Murdochs, Fox News, also a Murdoch staple. And this is how the Fox and Friends crew reacted to Jordan Neely's death. I'm sure you can guess where this is going, but the flavor of it is particularly gross.
Medical examiner has said it was a homicide, and now the district attorney, which released the 24-year-old Marine, is deciding whether or not to charge him.
Correct.
Then it would change from a homicide to a murder.
Correct.
Yeah. Also, other passengers also felt threatened. They helped out too. This man who died has numerous other arrests for assault, disorderly conduct, fare beating, according to law enforcement. So before she quickly says this guy is just houseless, understand you could be houseless and you don't have to harass other people on the subway at 2:30 in the afternoon. This is constantly happening in New York. We've been telling you about it. I ride the subways almost exactly the same time when I'm not working late at night. On the F train too, by the way. And I can't tell you how many times you see these guys walking up and down screaming, and you think to yourself, this can get out of control at any moment. So this 24-year-old is able to sit there and suppress with a chokehold, not beat him senseless, and maybe perhaps.
Wait, pause it. If he beat him senseless, would he still be alive? The point is that this was a killing.
Suppressed with a chokehold is another way to say choke.
Yeah, right. I mean, and one of the things that he listed there, I didn't know what he was talking about, but God forbid he has a criminal record in the past and got caught for turnstile hopping, fare evasion. I mean, so he deserved to die. He deserved to die, I guess.
Yeah, and like this thing, there's a way Kilme talks about this, and the narrative is like I guess kind of blaming de Blasio and these sort of liberal reform efforts, but I haven't noticed a whole, like maybe there's an uptick during the pandemic because a lot of like the aid that went out to people didn't reach people who weren't in the formal economy, so there's a little bit more desperation, but people who are impoverished and undercared for in society have been on the subway system for the entire time I've been here.
I've been here for 36. Yeah. I've been here for 36, going on 37 years. I've been riding public transit over a quarter of a century by myself now. I've seen people who were homeless, or I've seen people who had mental illness yelling and things like that. I could probably count the fingers on one hand, how many times I've seen it go beyond just the person just keeping to themselves and yelling to themselves and whatever. It's not whatever they're claiming it is. They're really pushing that this annoyance factor of not being able to take a subway and be in pure bliss is something that requires you to stand up and do something. If someone is yelling and screaming on a subway, you just move to a different subway car or just ignore them. If they're not physically attacking you or about to physically attack you, as in like lunging for you, then there's many different options for you to take that doesn't require you getting physical with the person, like this Marine or whatever apparently did.
Bender, your mic, by the way, it's scratching up, but
all right, let me fix.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. And, I like how he conflates multiple things, like the feeling of inconvenience or being uncomfortable on the train with like an imminent threat to your safety, because you just don't know what might happen. But it's clear that in this case, the Marine is the one who seems to have escalated the violence to the point where someone died.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't know. And I'm sure people will say that, well, like they were in fear for their life, because we hear this narrative come out all the time that somehow fearing for your life in this nondescript way is enough justification for murdering strangers in our society, because, that's just the ultimate form of the neoliberalism that we're trying to cultivate in, where we live. And it does fit into these, narratives online that right wingers are constantly trying to push around the dangers of urban settings and why you need to flee from New York and why you need to, why the police need to be roaming wild in these streets. But in reality, the biggest problem is not the violence, but the reminder that, homeless people in this city streets remind people of this is what the cost of these huge buildings are. This is the cost of the multi-million-dollar estates and rents in the city. Like, there's no way to get around that if this is the way we're going to live. And, to pretend otherwise is just, irrational.
And I return to the way that we've constructed urban centers in this country to be playgrounds for bridge and tunnelers and for wealthy people who want to live in luxury condos, or for people in the suburbs that want to come in and see a show and not be subjected to seeing the consequences of the way that we've constructed our society in front of them. And that's what it was happening here. The Jordan Neely was experiencing a mental health episode because society had failed him. And the idea that we've gone to a place where we dehumanize houseless people to this point where his life is secondary, tertiary for the Fox News crew to riders' comfort in certain ways. And their immediate discomfort with seeing that person, and maybe fear, that's fine. But your fear in that instance is not the primary thing that should be responding to. It's the loss of life.
Yeah, it's
Also,
not relevant to the law either. Like the law has things like self-defense clauses and things like that. This guy, even by the original New York Post story, where he's just saying like, I'm hungry, I don't care if I go to jail because of how desperate he is. Like, that is not, like, you can't attack somebody, assault somebody, use deadly force that we don't let police officers use on somebody just for that. So like, it's a crime that was on that video.
It's also a crime that the police did not arrest him and just let him walk free immediately afterwards, because they're kind of in favor of this. I mean, we see that.
If anything, they want to celebrate this guy. For neutralizing a threat, so to speak. I mean, doing their job for them, essentially.
Right, citizen cop.
I'm sorry. Is my mic better?
Yes.
Yep. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Also, I think it's super important to really stress 15 minutes. Apparently, he had this guy
crazy.
In his hold. Like there are professional MMA fighters and people who study all sorts of different martial arts who are saying this is a thing that takes somebody, makes somebody pass out in maybe 10 seconds tops. What are you doing holding this hold for 15 minutes? That is, if you were trained to do something like that, especially as a Marine, you probably have the knowledge that holding it for that long can be lethal. So I mean, the idea that this guy is just trying to make this guy pass out, maybe if it was something that went wrong after 10 seconds, he would still be in the wrong, in my opinion, but maybe you could argue that something went wrong. This guy knew what he was doing, and to hold it for 15 minutes, I'm sorry, that's a fucking that takes it to a whole nother level, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, last I checked, police are banned from using chokeholds too. They're not allowed to just put a sleeper hold on you, much less an improperly applied one. Because, like you said, he's just some, I hate to say it, one of America's dumb veterans who have not been properly trained, probably to do this technique in a way that let's say a black belt in jiu-jitsu might be able to apply it in a way that's still not totally safe. Like when you see UFC fighters sleeping their fans and just letting them fall out on at a meet and greet. That's I
mean, how long was Eric Garner in the chokehold? Speaking of NYPD using that to kill somebody, so how long? I mean, I don't know. But
and the broader thing about let's say even after he said the thing about I don't care if you go to jail, he pulled out a weapon and then he's choked out. That's still we're still in the confronting a massive social problem that has been has existed for decades and decades in this country, where we just don't care about people.
Yeah.
And we push them to the absolute edge and leave them to themselves. And they reach a breaking point, and I just it's really disgusting.
And also, just from a purely, practical standpoint, it's just not a solution. And I think that's why when Fox News sort of advocate for this sorts of vigilante justice against this specter of homelessness in the population, they're on the other end of this advocating for more policies that make more people homeless. Like they're like,
exactly.
They're advocating for things, and it's really easy to view like the homeless person who yells at you on your way home as some sort of imminent threat that's static or that you wish would go away. But, there are so many stories of there, but for the grace of God go I, in a society where medical debt can take you from like a normal job to like bankruptcy in the course of a few months. And so it's in the best interest of the people who advocate for policies that reduce people to houselessness to also pretend as though like, get that out of sight, but then advocate that we treat them as dehumanized as possible. So you don't realize that ultimately that could be you. And then you'd be arguing for the same people, rather those people who you're supporting would be arguing for you to be choked to death in the subway.
And just to say, Eric Garner was in a chokehold for about 9 to 10 seconds.
Wow. So there you go. I mean, let's play the rest of this too, because
they're that's
kill me.
How long.
Yeah,
I mean, to 15 minutes.
There you go. Well,
and I haven't watched the full video, but there are
I think it was a 15-minute interaction and a 3-minute chokehold. Is what I
see. But even I guess 9 to 10 seconds compared to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the only two people who intervened on the subway were to hold the guy down.
Yeah. And I mean, like it was said, I didn't watch the full video on this, but like it's quoted somebody concerned about like, is he okay? And then the guy holding the hands down says, "Oh, he's not squeezing anymore." Yeah, we have more of this.
Let's go.
Something prior to that. That is why Mayor Adams responsibly said, let's wait. And the other thing is, too, do you want to wait for him to pound people like they did Adam Klotz and just have everyone just sit on the sideline and you're critical of those passengers? You have a 24-year-old who we trained in the military, lives on Long Island, hopping on a subway.
Sorry, just pause real quick. I don't know what case he's referring to there, but like in that case, if somebody does attack somebody and people intervene, like it's not a story.
Adam Klotz was a Fox meteorologist who apparently was beaten up on the subway or something, but
right, and it's like there wasn't a vigilante.
Also, you do have to wait for somebody to do something.
Exactly, that's the law.
Like, what world are we living in where we're just going to go around and say it's okay to attack someone just because you get a weird feeling about them?
Yeah,
you can't do that.
Preemptive violence. Like, what do you? Yeah, exactly. It's insane.
It's just like this toxic self-defense that has like perforated our society with this kind of like, okay, well, anything you do to protect yourself, even if it's just like paranoia, assuming the target is within a certain group or type of person, totally justifiable. We just saw a few days ago. I mean, I wasn't on the show at the time, but there was like an ex-fire chief in San Francisco or somewhere on the West Coast walking around like pepper spraying homeless people who was like retaliated against by one of the people he was attacking, only for this story to come out that, this person being held up as another victim of the homeless epidemic was just another vigilante, like taking it in his own hands to clean up the streets. It's a very sick cycle.
Freaking like Batman delusions of grandeur,
and like
psychos.
Like I don't know, like the story of that meteorologist, or whatever. Like, yeah, that's another story of somebody being failed and pushed to like a breaking point by society and lashing out. Like, and we need to do more about that because there's too much of that in this country. But yeah, like you can't. Yeah, you have to wait until somebody acts violence to protect people from violence.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Help out the American people again when I'm not in Afghanistan. Let me just grab this guy and hold him down. No cops around because they're understaffed and they're not on the trains. They're upstairs.
Not true.
And this guy takes action, and now you have people protesting for the homeless guy. Were you protesting when he was throwing garbage at people and threatening people in their face? So I have no patience for these people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, think about the lady who was beaten almost to death down underneath at the subway.
Course.
Remember we had her on a few weeks ago.
And we're wondering where the help is.
But someone died here.
And Brian,
the help isn't cops though. Like the help is to again materially support these people and give care to them and have a society that provides it. Like I
remember those
also
isolated.
They keep acting like they did. Nothing was done for this guy, for the what's his name again? Neely. I'm sorry,
Jordan Neely.
yeah.
Jordan Neely. They're acting like nothing was done to stop Jordan Neely. Here he was 40 times. Yeah, 40 times they arrested him apparently or detained him for various different reasons. And 40 times he didn't get any help. 40 times he was punished under whatever law. Because if you look at that list of 40 things, they're all small things. Like you said, like throwing trash, or I think there was a time where he punched an elderly woman. Again, these are bad things, but these are not lifetime in jail, throw away the key. This is things where you go in or pay a fine for the garbage, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months behind bars for punching someone with no long-standing injury or anything like that. Like that is the law. Like what, like you think just because you rack up charges, you get a life sentence if you like litter 40 times? That's just, I don't understand. The thing that this guy needed that didn't get was actual help for the underlying issue. Yeah. But there's no system in place due to our laws and our health system to actually get this guy the help that he needed. And a lot of these things too fall right under like conservative beliefs too. Like, do you want us to detain this guy illegally and force him into medical health or whatever that he doesn't even get provided to him for free, that he would have to pay for somehow or whatever? I mean, I don't understand what they want, because none of their ideological worldview feeds into what this guy needs.
I'm telling you what they want, though. They want to be in an urban area where they can have fun and go out to dinner, and they want to be in like a vibrant urban setting and be around people, but not those kinds of people.
Yeah, it's Westworld. Hey, let's go to a Broadway show. But if there's a vagrant, I might just fucking kill that guy.
Yeah.
No, it's the purge. No, it really is the purge.
No harm, no foul. I'll get released.
It's so interesting, because when Michael Bay's classic The Purge came out years ago, people knocked it for being not very subtle. But the older I get, the more I realize, no, like The Purge is just like, that's just the way things are. Yeah. Or like that movie, especially the latter ones, that's just the way things are, told through the slightest veneer of like satire. And, as Michael Bay is not a very subtle person. But when you look at the way people react to things like this, you see that like, yeah, we're one or two bad days as a country from like a national purge, because people are very convinced that, our brutal criminal justice system that does not even the bare minimum to try to reform people really anymore is somehow insufficient to, I guess, de-incentivize this behavior. And instead of trying anything else, the only solution really is that we start allowing for more summary executions, just based on like the grounds of like, well, we live in a society, I guess, where any violence could happen at any time. So it's better that it happens to you before it happens to me. Mm-hmm. And that's just not a real sustainable place to live. But, I think that what we're forgetting about is all of the isolated incidences of violence that are taking place, essentially homeless people attacking people on trains and pushing them in front of trains, attacking a passerby. We're forgetting that, when you're in charge of a news program, you can find every isolated case like that, give it the biggest spotlight, and never once talk about just the entire epidemic of houselessness that exists in this country. And like the many, many people who die as a result of that structural violence, as opposed to just like the isolated incidences of interpersonal violence. Because ultimately, we know if this was like an epidemic, if people were really being killed every day by homeless people in this country, we would hear about it.
Exactly.
So like all they can do is but remember that one time that one of our weathermen was attacked on the train one time? Remember that person last week we found this happened to? That's news, right? That's not like an isolated incident.
Yeah, I just told the story, but I have been hit by someone who had a mental episode who sat down next to me on the subway and in my face and in my chest. The idea that I see that as a consequence of living in an urban environment. I interact with people, and that is a part of the situation. That is a part of what I have bought into when I said I want to live in Brooklyn, right? I want to live in this area, and I know that I live in a society where we don't provide mental health care or health care for people, so that's what happens. But I don't want that person freaking executed or any violence happening to them, because this is what I feel terrible for that person. But yeah, but I hate to even bring up that story. But it's just, we've all had these interactions.
Yeah. Well, listen, we don't know who this individual is. The guy who put Neely in a chokehold. We don't know who he is.
How do we not know?
Some because they won't release who he is yet. I'm sure if they decide to, it'll come out sooner or later.
I haven't seen anything.
I mean, let's put it this way: it won't surprise me at all to find out that this guy was visiting and does not live in New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to speculate, but it seems like that because, like Emma said,
how has he not done that before then?
Yeah, people who live in New York City know what to expect, know how to deal with situations like that. Just like someone who lives in a rural environment knows how to deal with some of the negative aspects of living in a rural environment, or some of the things you need to beware of in a rural environment. It's just you come to know your surroundings. And this guy clearly came in here thinking that he was, I don't know what he was thinking, but he clearly was not someone who has come across this before, because that's not how you deal with it.
Yeah, Binder, I think in the Fox and Friends, I'm pretty sure they say at some point, I'm obviously hard to verify, it's a Fox and Friends report, but I think they say he was from Long Island.
Yeah.
But the one point I just wanted to make was, to your point, Emma, that like it seems trite to be like we live in a society, but it's true in the sense that every stitch in the fabric of society is a stitch in the fabric. Like we don't live in a society where we can pick and choose and omit and edit out people we find distasteful or unsavory. Everyone exists here. Yeah. Everyone is a person here. Everyone is a beating heart here. Everyone is blood pumping through their veins, even if they're distressed, even if they have no resources, even if they're thirsty, hungry, dying, mentally ill, disabled. They're all here. We all have to interact with each other, and we all have to be a part of this together, regardless of whether we like it or not. One of the biggest obstacles to things like prison abolition or police reform or any sort of police reform or police abolition is the understanding or the acknowledgement that if we do get more people behind bars, and if we arrest less people, there are going to be less people who might be unsavory characters, who might be upset, who you might be upset about seeing them on the subway, that won't be shackled, that won't be arrested for nothing, that won't be arrested for fare evasion, that won't be arrested for turnstile hopping or disorderly conduct because like they got mad at a cop for pushing them on the subway. You know, there's room for these people. There's room for these people if we actually took care of them, and we don't.
I would be more distressed to see a Fox News anchor on the train than any unhoused person.
Same.
But, I would just say that, they said he was from Long Island. Who knows? Because the truth is, unfortunately, we pump anti-homeless propaganda from from many of our corporate news channels. It wouldn't surprise me.
It's made for people not in those urban areas.
Mm-hmm. It's not. And I think that the reality is, it attacks something that centrists, especially urban centrists, take very seriously. I'll like group liberals and conservatives who live in urban areas in sort of the same bubble, which is that like it attacks their comfort. And that's one of the central tenets of centrism within our political environment. Like one thing that you don't want to attack is their feeling of comfort and well-being, in even the most vague sense, because they'll call for your head. Mm-hmm. People who describe themselves as liberals. Who was the startup lady who wanted to lynch people for dancing in the park at night in San Francisco? I'm sure she wouldn't describe herself as a conservative. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But I think a lot of people just, think of themselves as being reasonable, just not wanting to live in fear or uncertainty or their comforts being violated. The same sort of thing that people have been trained to do when it came to broken windows policing. This idea of you just look at graffiti and you should feel uncomfortable, and then that should justify you advocating for some sort of harsh crackdown on whatever populations you think are lending themselves to creating this sort of, stimulus essentially. And I think, when you're watching that from the suburbs, there's a lot of that mentality already there. We see it take over, not just in the men, but in the women in their true crime fascination. And it's really easy for them to imagine themselves being very uncomfortable about the specter of crime or the specter of random violence. And therefore, something just has to be done about it. We've done a really good job of dehumanizing certain populations across the political spectrum within our society. Even when you hear people say like, well, we just have to have mental health treatment, it still does the work of like otherizing these people, as though like people require mental health treatment who would have otherwise never thought that they would have needed it, yesterday, a week ago, a year ago. And, unless we start treating both of these sort of states of being, unhoused and mentally impaired, as just what they are, like states of being that you could transition to, especially in our society at any time, people are still going to be willing to dehumanize them in ways that ultimately just lead to them not getting the services they need.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, for all the talk of destigmatizing mental health.
It's all talk. I mean, that's why it's frustrating to like have conversations that are so detached from the actual like impoverishment and material underinvestment in people, like and make it about personal things. Like like this is like, and to like what you said, Emma, about like your experience, like that stuff is a societal problem that exists too much, and it is because we do not care for people in this society and we leave it up to themselves. Like all the people that say like, well, you shouldn't have been acting like that, like there are consequences to making people like it's a
No, there are
murderous
consequences
pathology.
to living in the city. You wanna be here? Fucking be here. Be here.
Right, but like
that's it though.
It
I don't
shouldn't be
care.
that bad. Like it shouldn't.
But
be,
I know, but like
yeah.
that, but in the immediate, like just fucking be here,
Yeah.
and then also advocate for people to have housing and health care.
Right.
Like you said,
Yeah,
like New York is not a playground. Like people live here. There are citizens of this city who have lived like Binder. Like Binder, you have lived here your whole life. Like you are a citizen of you're a citizen of the city. Like the mythos of the city on the across the political spectrum, but especially on the right, is just like New York is this great tourism hub, but it's totally sandbagged by crime and it's dirty. And it's like, first of all, no one would ever be able to say this on the other side of that about like Topeka, Kansas, for example. But second of all, it's not even fucking true.
I mean, this is why Elon Musk hates public transportation, I think, is because it does bring you into contact with parts of society that a lot of other parts of society would like to be insulated from.
Exactly.
You know, they're trying to bring back the narrative of like sleazy, dangerous from the 80s New York. You know, you see in movies where there are like porn theaters in Times Square, and that's just not where it is. And I agree, you know, there can be consequences. And I think that that's one of the central misunderstandings of prison abolition that we saw when it was becoming really popular in the aftermath of, you know, another unarmed, shooting or choking out or like murder as it could become, you know, fill in the blanks, whichever one is appropriate at the time, is that like, it's not that there are no consequences, it's that the American imagination for like criminal justice has been entirely hijacked by the punitive, by the most punitive solutions. And so when you say we have to do something about the homeless, the only thing they can think is like putting them in camps or like shooting them in the streets.
Yeah.
It's like there's a whole bucket of solutions that fall under prison abolition, but people just think that there is you either have people in jail or you just let them roam the streets like committing crimes or something. And it shows that the right has been, done a really good job of co-opting the narrative about what it means to have a criminal justice system, a rehabilitative, one at that, because no one can even consider anything that's not just like, okay, well, what do you do about this? It's like literally anything but summarily execute them in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, well, and also, like, let's also not throw them into Rikers. Like, it's wild we're having this conversation as if there's no accountability or like, sort of, the state is doing too much. Yet, people in North Dakota know what Rikers is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People will tell you that, like the state can't do anything right. And so we shouldn't even try to like reform it, not like reform it from within. That's kind of stupid, but like we shouldn't put them in charge of that kind of thing. But what they should be in charge of is, executing people in the streets if you have a mental episode. Like it's just like this very, again, the far right and neoliberals have been very good at sort of sowing this distrust in public institutions, but still like equipping them with some of the most like, overreaching powers that they could possibly have, like spying on you all the time and also being allowed to kill you in the streets on like the flimsiest justification. But if you go like, well, I don't know, maybe we could have like a criminal justice system that like reforms people. What happened to getting your like degree or GED in prison? Can you still do that? Like, no, we can't trust them with that. Like that would just become like, out of control.
All right, well, let's have some actual fun now, because this is like truly one of the more depressing topics we've ever covered.
The grim half.
Yeah, this one's fun.
It's disturbing though, like how many people are saying that this was okay to do.
I know.
You can only hope that it's just the blue check, like the algorithm showing you like the worst people online for once. Like it's just like
I hope that's the case, because
the crap is filtering to the top.
You even have the freaking eyewitnesses there who are even like in their interviews are feeling like on the side of this Marine guy, while also straight up acknowledging, yeah, it's true, he wasn't physically threatening anyone or getting physical with anyone. He was just yelling. But still, it's mind-blowing that you could have been there and seen that and just been okay with what happened. I think that's what disturbs me more than even the online takes.